Hello everyone. Thank you for visiting our channel. Have you ever experienced such life stories? James returned home from yet another interview. It seems he won't be invited again. He walked into the kitchen where his wife Haley was preparing dinner. "Hello dear, how did it go?" she asked. James paused for a moment to consider how to tell her about another disappointment. He had been looking for a new job for a month after being laid off. But not wanting to upset his wife, he replied, "It went okay. They said they will call back by the end of the week." "Haley, I saw a job vacancy in your company yesterday. I meet the requirements, and I'm thinking of giving it a try," James continued. His wife looked at him apprehensively and bit her lip. "Do you really want us to work at the same place?" she asked. "Do you think it's a good idea? But why not? We'll have the same schedule, leave home together, and after work, we'll be on the same route," James said with a smile. "Finally, we'll be able to take our vacation at the same time." "Well, only if it's possible," Haley replied, frowning and turning back to the stove. James didn't understand her reaction, but he had already decided to send his resume there. Enough with the rejections. It was time to get to work. A week later, James was invited to the first interview, which he easily passed. The second stage was more challenging, but he outperformed his competitors. Finally, he received the coveted invitation to a decent position in a branch of a large company. He decided to celebrate this event with Haley, bought a cake, champagne, and headed home. His wife had just come back from work. "Haley, they hired me," James said joyfully as he took out the treats and put them on the table. "Oh, congratulations," his wife said with somewhat forced enthusiasm. James immediately noticed her reaction. "Haley, what happened? Why are you upset?" Haley let out a heavy sigh and told him about her concerns. She was afraid that if they saw each other 24/7, they would start arguing frequently. They would get tired of each other, and there would be nothing to talk about. In addition, when their colleagues found out they were married, there would be stupid jokes and gossip. She said that her friend had been in the same situation with her husband and was howling in despair. James hugged his wife to calm her down. They wouldn't have such a problem. "If it makes you feel better, let's ask management not to publicize our marriage. Let there only be a working relationship at work," he said to her. Haley calmed down, and they sat down to eat cake. She refused champagne, citing a headache. Contrary to his wife's fears, life was getting better. James really liked his new job, and the team seemed friendly at first glance. Someone always came to his aid in all controversial moments. Things were good with his wife, too. Although she worked in another part of the big office, they still saw each other sometimes. Such a distance even played into their hands. After all, they agreed not to publicize their relationship. So several months passed. One day, James needed to deliver documents to the accountant. Walking to the right office, he glanced over at his wife's workstation. She wasn't there. He looked around and finally saw her. She sat on the edge of the table where a man was sitting. Crossing her legs, she pointed to some papers, looking him in the eye and smiling. It was clear that the man enjoyed her company. He didn't look at her like a colleague. James felt a jolt from watching this scene. She had many questions. Then, one of her colleagues approached him. "Newbie, lost?" he said, patting James on the shoulder. "Not at all. Tell me, who is Haley talking to right now?" the man asked. "That's Ryan, the head of her department. He came to us a little earlier than you, by the way, but he's already made a lot of changes to suit himself." The colleague laughed. "What do you mean?" James didn't understand. "Oh, newbie, you still have so much to learn, but it's better to do it in an informal setting." The man smiled again and went to his desk. James felt uneasy. What were these vague answers and strange jokes? She decided to observe Ryan. He clearly felt at home there. He spoke to other employees a lot. looked confident and sometimes even arrogant. You could hear him giving mentorship advice in a condescending tone. The female part of the office gravitated towards him, whether it was because of his status or charisma. They came to him for advice, smiled sweetly, and thanked him profusely for his help. Then they stood by the water cooler, threw glances in his direction, and discussed something animatedly. James decided not to let his colleagues' words go. If he had a lot to learn, he was ready, and soon an opportunity to do so arose. On Friday afternoon, HR asked everyone to gather in the conference room to make announcements to the entire office. The company's large annual corporate event will be held soon in a banquet hall in the city center. Not only their office, but also several branches from nearby cities will attend. It will be a major event, so everyone should show how united they are. After HR finished her speech, everyone was excited about the news and eagerly discussed the upcoming event. However, James became suspicious. He couldn't remember anything unusual about Haley's behavior after such events, and she had been working there for 6 years. On the way home, he talked to his wife about the upcoming event, suggesting that they go together. But his wife wasn't thrilled and said that there was usually nothing interesting at these events. James found this strange because she had always been very meticulous in preparing for the corporate event and returned in a good mood. There seemed to be something fishy, so he decided to investigate. He already had a plan in mind. On the day of the corporate party, the wife was not in the mood. She was getting ready and putting on makeup reluctantly. Her husband noticed the change in Haley's behavior and started to play along. He pretended to have eaten something spoiled and was experiencing stomach pain and nausea. His wife retrieved some tablets from the medicine cabinet and gave them to him. "Haley, it's probably not meant to be for me to accompany you today. I'll lie down at home, and you go to the party. You won't die there from boredom without me," he added, trying to smile. The wife frowned demonstratively and told him to get well soon, while she started getting ready faster. She could hardly hide her quiet joy. The plan worked. James waited a couple of hours before going to the event. By that time, the official part should have ended. He took a taxi and went to the restaurant. Upon entering the hall, he was surprised by how many people had come. Indeed, it was not just their office here. The man began to walk around the room, looking for his wife in the crowd. He approached the table with snacks and decided to observe from there. He was already spinning various scenarios in his head of what could happen. His thoughts were interrupted by the conversation of a group of people who had gathered nearby. They were colleagues from his office. "I wonder what Haley will do this time," said the tall brunette. "She can't even drink. Have you seen how she gets? Although in this way, she can still show how united we are," laughed the young guy, quoting from a recent speech. "I bet she'll start hanging on to someone new, like she did with Ryan back then," summed up the girl. Everything became clear. This is what he had to find out. James was beginning to boil. Now he had to be more attentive and look around carefully to verify his colleagues' words. And soon he saw everything for himself. Haley was dancing with her boss, Ryan, and she clearly wasn't bored. Then they sat down at a table and toasted each other. The man leaned in and whispered something in Haley's ear. She smiled and nodded. There was no surprise or awkwardness in their interaction, indicating that their relationship was not just professional. Ryan finished his drink in one go, took Haley's hand, and led her somewhere out of the hall. James quickly followed them. The couple walked down the corridor and turned towards a far door. After waiting for a while, James burst into the room. It was just as the colleagues had said. James's wife was on the table, and her dress was lying at her lover's feet. Disregarding all formalities and possible consequences, James ran towards the smug Ryan and punched him in the face with all his might. Ryan, apparently never having received such a sudden blow, didn't even attempt to defend himself. He fell to the floor and began crawling away from the enraged man. James turned his gaze to his wife, who was looking at her lover in fear. "How long has this been going on?" he shouted. His wife started crying and couldn't get a word out. "Don't touch her." Ryan, wiping blood from his sleeve, finally got up. "What do you think you're doing?" The man was about to strike him, but James blocked the blow. "She's my wife, you dog. Back off if you don't want more." Fear was now visible on Ryan's face. Apparently, he didn't know that his colleague was married, or more likely, he didn't know that her husband now worked with them. That night, Haley didn't come home, and in the morning, her friends came for her things. She was too ashamed to face her husband. She didn't even try to apologize, knowing that it was useless. James would never forgive such deception. They eventually divorced, and James resigned from the company on his own accord. He didn't want anything to do with those corrupt people anymore. He found a job in another company where the atmosphere was much nicer, but he now avoided company events. What do you think about this situation? Share your thoughts in the comments. And thank you for listening to the story until the end. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and be sure to like this video, as it will help us promote the channel. All the best.